All right, welcome back, everyone. We are back with our fourth episode of Stoicism for Band Directors. My name is Katie Stanowski. I teach band at Montezuma Cortez High School.
And I'm Tom Chapman. I'm the director of bands at Lewis Palmer High School.
So the focus for our final, little segment here, we've been doing the three different domains. Our first one was on the domain of the mind. Our second one was on the domain of the spirit. This last one is on the domain of the body. And Tom, feel free to chime in. But I think that for both of us, this was an entire section that resonated with us and had so many different takeaways. Would you agree?
Yeah, oh, definitely. This is probably full of the most actionable advice out of all of the three sections.
So with all that in mind, we're just kind of going to rattle through some of these, and hopefully you guys can pick one or two or a small handful to try on your own, and hopefully they work as well for you as they have for us.
So I'm going to kick things off because this is how this starts in the book. One of the very first things it goes over is say no, which it's interesting saying that to a bunch of band directors. Or I just got off the phone earlier today with another band director that we were just talking about, like other teachers that are surprised they have to come in during their summers and do work. When we're like, oh yeah, I'm in my building once a week, whether the students are there or not. Someone's got to clean that tuba, and so saying no. I've been pushing myself to do this, and in fact, I even journaled about it last night. I took the prompt that I had and went, really, I need to start saying no to some things, and the overworked mind is not there to function, to help others, and to help create the best good around you. So that's an easy one. Just try to say no to something, even if it's the best thing in the world. Even your kids, there's only so much they can take in a classroom. Sometimes you need to say no and ask what is the depth I'd rather create rather than the other thing I could do.
Yeah, absolutely. The first one that kind of jumped out to me, and I think this was for both of us, was take a walk. Now, I know a lot of times we think of this in terms of, I need to go out and get some exercise, and there's something to all of the physiological benefits that come from taking a walk. But the purpose of it in this is more so to give yourself some space, to clear your mind, to draw inspiration from other things. My fiance and I, especially since the quarantine, we got very, very aggressive with this one, where we started programming walks into our everyday just as a means to get out of the house, to clear our heads, to kind of get some of the stress out. And it's also easier to talk about stuff when you're walking. I don't know, Tom, what did you have with this one?
Yeah, I've been walking ever since I started teaching, but it was mainly because I had dogs and I felt bad for them and I needed to get them out of the house and have them see something new. But I do what a lot of us do is I especially would plug in when I would take a walk. Even when I'd go hiking on my own, I'd plug in, like, whether it's a pop album, a symphony, a podcast, I would always be listening to something, and kind of I started stepping back from that, and I've decided to take my walks unplugged, and just to hear the world around me and to have one time where I don't have input coming into my mind, because taking a walk, it puts you in the here and now, especially if you focus on the here and now. Like, I was listening to an interview with someone the other day that was talking about, like, I decided to take my bike ride a little slower, and I started noticing all these things around me, and it changed from being something I had to do and had to be done to, oh, this is a moment of break for my mind. And it causes you to focus on the here and now, and to really pull yourself out of the past, pull yourself out of the future, and put yourself now where you can find some calm and find a refreshing moment. And the same thing that Katie said, Jen and I take walks together, and sometimes we talk, and sometimes it's half an hour of just silence. But it's a good way. It's something that's nice to do to break up your day and just to get you out of a building, especially for us, where we can find ourselves getting to school at 7 and leaving school at 8 in the evening sometimes. So I have the next section, and we both had thoughts on this, building a routine. I went back to the book, and I love routines, and this book really got me to sit down and think about, what routines do I have? What routines do I not have? And, it caused me to reflect and think, The days that I don't have a routine, some days we need a break, but especially as many districts experienced when we went on this closure for COVID-19, we had an extra week of spring break we weren't expecting. And I mean, after a week of having no formed my day, I start to go stir crazy. And so I actually sat down and I made myself a routine for when I was not in school. And I really think that helped me get through that time. And I think this sentiment from the book says it really well. It when you don't have a routine, everything becomes a choice. It's a choice you have to make. Well, okay, what am I eating this morning? What do I do next? What time do I take a shower? Everything becomes a choice. And even though there's small choices, we all know those small things start to add up over time, and it depletes us of our ability to make thoughtful decisions. The greatest thinkers had a routine that helped set up their minds to be ready for big decisions. Even though he passed away recently, one of the last interviews Oliver Sacks gave, famous neuroscientist, he would talk about how he ate the same thing for breakfast for like 30 years. And he would always know he needed 7 oranges, 7 apples, and 7 bottles of something or other. And as limiting as that may feel, it also takes that decision off your plate. It takes one thing off your plate of what am I going to eat. And that's just one example. I also provided a sample routine for my students when closure happened. And I was told by many parents that spurred them to help make a routine for their families, and that helped them get through that time. It gives you something to ground yourself. It organizes your day so it's not a total waste or not totally overwhelming. And we can use this down to, we're supposed to use this. We know we are supposed to use this in organizing our rehearsals, or even when we're teaching our students how to practice, which is something many of us don't know. We don't know for a long time that we need a routine and a way to go about it. And it's funny, when I was teaching beginning band and I taught my kids how to make a routine for themselves when they practice, all of a sudden kids were coming in and going, before 30 minutes felt like a chore, and now I get to the end of 30 minutes and with a routine, I'm like, oh, I still want to keep going. And that routine, it's just so helpful for that. And, my wife always jokes, she says, you're at your worst in the summer, because that's where the routine goes out the window. And she's like, you get moody, you get angry, you get frustrated. And she's totally right, because I don't have a routine of what I'm doing during my day. And so I give myself 2 weeks off to just totally relax. And then I find a routine of what I do every day. And so I can't speak enough to it.
Yeah, no, beautifully said, Tom. I appreciate you touching on the decision thing. I think they call it decision fatigue, right? As band directors, we're faced with so many choices, and small choices and big choices and microscopic choices, every second of our day, that the more we can do to eliminate the ones that don't need to tax us unnecessarily, the better we can function. So yes. I didn't think of it that way, so I appreciate you bringing that up. I don't have a whole lot to add to this one. You did a beautiful job of this. I know for me, the biggest components of my routine that I can control and that kind of set me up for success or failure are my morning routines, and then if I get to have an evening at home, that evening routine. I've also found this to be a very, very powerful way to, build habits, that I want to. So one example is usually during the summertime, I kind of do the same thing. I kind of go a little bit everywhere. And this summer, I really want to make sure that I'm spending time with my scores every day, which I don't always do in the summer. And so for me, it's, going through my normal routine in my head and finding a time of day. Okay, usually when Joey gets home from work, he'll do some stretching, and then while he's stretching, I'm gonna be looking at my scores, and then we'll eat dinner together or something. But if utilized correctly, I think it can be kind of a superpower for band directors. So it's an important one if you haven't thought about it yet.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because we were talking a little bit about what my course load looks like next year, and I'm taking over a guitar class, and upon my request, I'm also starting a general music survey of pop and rock class. And as I'm prepping for those, because I've never played guitar and I've never taught this survey class before, I'm trying to get ahead of it this summer. And the past 2 days I've sat down and my goal was, all right, I'm going to play guitar until my fingers fall off, and I'm also going to work on this class until I finish one class period. And after 2 days, it was too much. My entire day was just a wash. I would sit there and I would practice guitar for an hour, and I would be cranky because by the end I was in pain because I've never played guitar before. And then I would spend all this time on these classes, on this other class, and by the end of the day I hadn't read a book, I hadn't gone outside, I missed walking the dogs. And so it's kind of the other side, like going, all right, I'm only going to practice for 30 minutes on guitar. And I got done with guitar and I went, okay, that felt good today. I made progress. I'm not mad. And then I also decided, okay, what do I really need to have prepped for this other class? And I've made a more realistic goal than working on it every other day. And I mean, it goes both ways, both creating a habit and breaking a bad habit. So the next section, seeking solitude. I love this one. Mindfulness. This is like the fourth video in a row I've mentioned that, but I mean my mindfulness stuff. Sometimes I'll journal about it and be like, "Why was I upset today? Oh, I didn't sit in silence for even 10 minutes." But it's also like reading a book, not just listening to an audiobook while you do something else, but sitting there and causing yourself to be still in a quiet enough area to read. Going camping, going hiking. Last night, I don't know why. We're not at the new moon yet, but I went outside last night. The moon wasn't up, and I was letting the dogs out at like 12:30 in the morning. And I looked up, and all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, look, the Milky Way! I haven't seen that in a couple of lunar cycles." And I just sat there and stared at the stars. I looked up when the next new moon is, and because of where we live, I told Jen, I'm like, "You know what? The new moon is on Saturday. We should just like at 11 o'clock jump in the truck and drive out to this one park that's really dark, and we should just lie in the bed and stare at the stars for like an hour and just count shooting stars." And I mean, just the idea of being outside, disconnected. There's so many band directors that go camping, but even if you're not a camping type of band director, just finding some sort of stillness and solitude in your day to just have that refreshing time. I mean, it's huge for me.
Yeah, certainly. The big one for me, just thinking about what you were saying, is on like band trips. So for those of you who don't know, I teach kind of out in the boonies of Colorado. So anytime we go anywhere with our band, it's it's an overnight trip or 2 trips. And sometimes, we're sleeping on gym floors, or, where you're literally with the children, for every minute for, a multiple day trip. And I found that for me, such a key component for me approaching approaching situations with clarity and any semblance of, I don't know, good decision making. Like, I have to find some time in these trips to just get 20 minutes to not be around people, my parents and my staff know that, in the morning I'm going to lace up my shoes and I'm going to sneak out for 20 minutes and run while my assistant watches the kids, and I'll be okay after that. But I can't go 24, 48 plus hours without a little bit of that solitude time.
Yeah.
It makes me a bad person to be around, a bad teacher. Don't,
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't underestimate the importance of that one. My next one is, I love this. It's called Be a Human Being. And one of the reasons I chose this is my undergraduate tuba teacher. He's a guy named Andy Rummel, one of the best musicians I've ever known, a fantastic teacher as well. And he would always say to me, because I needed this, he'd always say, "Hey, Katie, don't forget to be a person." So my thing, my default as an undergrad was to spend so much time in a practice room and so much time at the library and so much time, I loved music. I wanted to be really good at it. So I'd go crazy about it. But he was always the one to remind me, hey, don't forget to become a human being as well. Don't forget to go out to coffee with friends sometimes. Don't forget to go to a party once in a while. Don't forget to do social things. And he was set a great example of this. Like I said, one of the best tuba players I've ever known. And every summer he takes a month off. He just puts his horn away for a month and he comes back, and he always comes back fresher and better at it. So that concept of don't forget to take time to be a person. The example given in the book was 2 athletes. You guys all know, of course, Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, who was one of the most decorated gold medal, Olympic athletes for the United States. And what was it, after 7 years he retired?
Yeah.
He kind of got burnt out and never wanted to get into the pool again, in spite of his great abilities. And then, if you're familiar with the name Eliud Kipchoge, he's the guy who recently unofficially broke the marathon 2-hour barrier. He's one of the most successful distance runners of all time. And if you do a zoom in on his life, he runs a running camp. You can see him in the mornings mopping the floors of his running camp. If you look at his bookshelf, it's not covered with running books. It's about books. It's covered in books about other things. You know, he has other interests. So not only is he focusing, of course, on being the best athlete he can be, but he's focusing on being a human being and being a good person. I think that's why, part of the reason why he's so successful, and also why he's had such longevity in his running career. So band directors were the same way. We're not athletes, but we all want to have that longevity. We know that things get better the longer we can do it. Good decisions aren't made by those of us who are running on empty. So expand your horizons. Don't forget to be a human being.
Well, this next one, it's just short. Just go to sleep. I loved that chapter. It was like, seriously, just go to bed. And you know, we're everybody that's successful has a tendency to think that I need to spend more time on work, but really we need to sleep. Like, my body's natural sleep cycle approaches 9 hours, and if I were to actually take that seriously, that has me going to bed before 9 o'clock during the school year. And so I just had to kind of take that into consideration. I am not in my undergrad anymore. I can't stay up until 2 in the morning and wake up at 6 a.m. and just sleep at Christmas break. I need to be there for my students. And so just, sleep. Find a sleep tracker to help you out. I use Sleep Cycle. It's free. It's been a game changer for me. But also be careful, because there's nothing worse than feeling like you have to race against that like bedtime you've set for yourself. I actually cause myself more stress trying to get to that bedtime, but I'm just more cognizant now of, you know what, I need to get some sleep. So that's just a quick one.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, we're gonna have to edit for a hot second because I'm getting blinded by this glare.
Okay, sounds good.
A second, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm like, yeah, it's not gonna move that fast. It was that fast. Okay. So my next one, and Tom shared this one as well, so I'll let him talk about it, is the concept of finding a hobby. And I'm going to go one step further and say you should find a hobby that has nothing to do with your profession. Because all of us, it's easy for us to say playing our instruments is a hobby. We love going to concerts, that's a hobby, and that's okay. But I think that it's very important for us to pursue some things outside of what we do professionally. So the example given in the book was Winston Churchill, who we all know is the famous diplomat who is basically responsible for ending World War II early. He had a hobby of painting landscapes, and I don't remember what the statistic was, but throughout the course of the war, he painted hundreds of mediocre paintings that are hanging in museums, not because of their artistic merit, but because they were what helped him gain the clarity that he needed to make the decisions that he had to make to do so much good. And so I think as band directors, it's important for us to pick something. It doesn't have to be something you're awesome at. It doesn't have to be something that's going to end up in a museum. Let's be honest, it probably won't be. But that's not the point. The point is to indulge in this, to clear your mind, to draw your attention to other things so that when you come back to your professional life, it's with greater clarity.
Yeah, and I totally agree. One of the best, as weird as it sounds, because it tends to have negative connotations. For a while last year, one of my main hobbies was playing a video game online. And I got turned off from that for other reasons, but really I would come home and I'm like, I got 30 minutes. I'm going to boot it up. I'm going to play with other people online. I'm going to work on improving my skills in that. At no point was I going to become professional and make money off of it, but I just used it because I'm like, this is fun. It allows me to focus. It gives me something to improve. But now it's turned into, okay, well, let's go make a duck house. Let's go make duck shelters. Let's go make a new coop for the chickens. So let's put up a fence. And so that's become more of my hobby now. But the idea is it's a hobby is a leisure activity, and it's an action. It's something you do. And the best quote came from the book, and so, quote, leisure is not the absence of activity, it is the activity. What is absence is any external justification. You can't do leisure for pay, you can't do it to impress people. You have to do it for you, end quote. And I like that. It's something you do for yourself that maybe no one else even knows about, but it's something you do that you enjoy, and you have to make time for it. That's one of the tricky parts is it becomes part of your routine, but it kind of leads into the next chapter. The next chapter was Beware Escapism, which I think is a huge part of this. We make time for it, but if it becomes an escapism or just an escape from reality, then it no longer refreshes. Instead, it ignores the life that you have. And I think I mentioned video games, and I think that's one of the issues with video games is if you just use it as an escape, because that's how they're designed a lot of times, you get enveloped in a different world, is it causes you to ignore life. And it ceases to be a leisure activity, a hobby, and it's a way to ignore what's actually in front of you. And it's the intention. Like, do you take a trip because it's time for you to escape and you need to get away from it all? Or are you taking a meaningful vacation? Are you picking up a book to ignore the world around you? Or is there a meaningful reason why you're just drawn to that book? And I liked this, don't tune out, tune in. Like a leisure activity, a hobby is something for you to tune into. And I think this is the best one. He ends the chapter with this. Build a life you don't need to escape from. If you're seeking escapism, then there's something else that you probably need to look at that needs to be ironed out. And that's okay. That kind of goes back to the beginning. Maybe it's time to say no to something. Maybe it's time to build a routine that you have. And so do you have anything you want to add to that? Because I have this last section too.
Yeah, no, I love that. Again, the difference being the intention of it. And I think that you're right. I think that kind of mindfully looking at our regular actions and what we choose to do with our spare time, I guess is just really, really important to figuring out kind of where we're at. And building a life that you don't need to escape from. I guess having the courage to examine and take an honest look at your life and question why you do what you do and make sure that you're in a place where you want to be and that you're doing the things that are living the life that you want to be able to look back on. Not to get heavy, but beautifully said.
Yeah.
Continue.
All right. Well, this last thing, and I thought this was just a great way to end it. Be brave. We kind of touched on this at the beginning of the last video, like, all of this practice, all of this Stoic approach to everything, it's not an excuse for inaction. It's to help guide us better through action. And so we don't want to just become complacent. We want to practice stillness so that we can be ready when an opportunity arises, whether it's in our professional teaching lives, whether it's in our home life, or whatever it may come up. We practice this stuff so that when the opportunity arises, we're ready to take hold and go with it. And so that wraps up pretty much the book for both of us. I've talked to a few people that have already purchased the book for themselves. I hope you get something out of this and further readings from it. Right now, this is what we have scheduled as our last video, but you never know what'll come up or what meditation we'll read from Marcus Aurelius or something that will go, oh my gosh, that was mind-blowing. Maybe we should talk about this. So we hope that you got something out of this and that you use it, as one podcast Stoic says, in your pursuit of the good life. So any last thoughts for you, Katie?
I think that about sums it up. Like we said, we hope that you guys are able to take a little something from this. We look forward to maybe continuing the conversation, and we're around. If you see us and you want to talk about it, come talk to us about it. There's so much to learn, so much that we're still learning about this philosophy and how to apply it, and so we hope that this did something for you.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good rest of your summer, and we'll see you later.